February 15, 2025. My wonderful students who has the experience of homeschool with me keep on working on Western civilization. This is the Harvard and Yale textbook for the freshmen. And in his wonderful private school, they study Western civilization, which is very different from most of the public school. We use his school program and also the Harvard program. He selected a very interesting topic, which is Great Depression. And we are going to ask all the question, what is going to happen in our era, 2025? Are we going to get into another round of depression or Great Depression? Then what's the implication from history? So James are going to enlighten us about Great Depression and how the Great Depression influenced the whole world from United States, Japan, and Germany. Go ahead, enlighten us. Facing the audience. Go, just talk loud and clear.
The Great Depression is during 1930 and is what happened after the events of World War I. This happens because of many reasons. For many people who are unemployed, the bank going down, and because of the losses and many funding for World War I. In Europe, unlike in the United States, in the 1920s, had not been roaring economically. It had been a decade of insecurity, of a search for elusive stability, of a short-lived upswinging, followed by collapse in financial production. The Great Depression that began in 1929 was the most severe downturn ever experienced by the capitalist economies. The Great Depression ended. The businesses as usual attitude that had marked the political life of Great Britain and France during the late 1920s. In Britain, the emergency led to a new coalition government and the abandonment of economic policies considered sacred for a century. The economic stagnation in France proved to be the occasion for a bold political and economic program sponsored by the parties of the left. The relative success of the British Avenue venture gave the nation new confidence in the democratic process. The new departure in France created social and political hostilities that undermined faith in Republican institution. In 1929, a second minority labor government headed by Ramsay MacDonald took office as the number of British unemployment rose to more than 2.5 million workers in 1931. The ministry became divided over what to do. MacDonald believed that the budget should be slashed, government salaries reduced, and unemployment benefits cut. This was a bleak program for a labor government. MacDonald's strong desire to make the Labor Party respectable led him to reject more radical programs. Many of the cabinet ministries reside MacDonald's proposal. They refused to take income away from the poor and the unemployed. The prime minister requested the registration of his entire cabinet and arranged for a meeting with King George V. Everyone assumed that the entire labor ministry was about to leave office. However, to the surprise of his party and the nation, MacDonald did not resign. At the urging of the king and probably of his own ambition, MacDonald formed a coalition ministry called the National Government, composed of labor conservatives and liberal ministers. The bulk of the Labor Party believed that their leader had sold them out in the election of 1931. The national government received a comfortable majority after the election. However, MacDonald, who remained prime minister until 1935, was a little more than a tool of the conservatives. They held a majority in their own right in the House of Commons, but the appearance of a coalition was used for imposing unpleasant programs. The national government took three decisive steps to attack the Depression. First, to balance the budget, it raised taxes, cut insurances, benefits to the unemployed and the elderly, and lowered government salaries. Its leaders argued that the fall in prices that had taken place meant that those reductions did not appreciably cut real income. Second, in September 1931, Britain went off the gold standard. The value of British pound on the international money market fell by about 30%. This move somewhat simulated exports. Third, in 1932, Parliament passed the import duties bill, which placed a 10% ad valorem tariff, a tax levied in proportion to the value of each imported good on all imports except those from the empire. In the context of previous British policies, these steps were extraordinary. The policies of national government produced significant results. Great Britain, provided the industrial production had expanded beyond the level for 1929. Britain was the first nation to restore that level of production. Of course, the mediocre British industrial performance of the 1920 made the British task easier. The government also encouraged lower interest rates. This in turn led to the largest private housing boom in history, in the industries related to housing and the furnished of homes prospered. During the Great Depression, there were way more downsides than you would think, such as Hitler coming to power. For 2 years, Browning governed with the confidence of his President von Hindenburg. The economy did not improve. However, and the political situation deteriorated. In 1932, the 83-year-old president stood for re-election. Hitler ran against him and forced a runoff. The Nazi leader got 30.1% of the first vote and 36.8% in the runoff. Although Hindenburg remained in office, the result of the poll convinced that Browning no longer commanded sufficient confidence from conservative German voters. On May 30, 1932, Hindenburg dismissed Browning and the next day appointed Franz von Papen 1878-1969 as chancellor. The new chancellor was one of a small group of extremely conservative advisors on whom the aged Hindenburg had become increasingly dependent on. Others included the president's son and several military figures. With the continued paralysis in Reichstag, their influence over the president virtually amounted to control of the government. Thus, only a handful of people made the crucial decision of the next several months. Hitler takes control of all of this as people who are really desperate for money in the Great Depression would obviously want to see something change, and Hitler promised them if they would give him the power to become the leader of Germany, he would find a way to get more money for them. And what better way to do that is by conquering other nations in order to grab their wealth, even if it's not much compared to how much they used to have. It is still an amount that the German citizens were proud to have. The Nazis during World War II started to take other countries, and considering that other countries were just starting to recover from the Great Depression, they had not they were not in a good state to fight back, and so they were trying to consider stopping World War II from happening. And during this time, Hitler, he obviously didn't want to negotiate. He just wanted what he promised everyone, and that was power and money. And eventually, after people started fighting back against Hitler, the Great Depression started to end, and was more about fighting against the Germans instead of the Great Depression. And eventually they got rid of the problem of the Great Depression. Now, seeing what happened back then with the Great Depression, I'd say if it happened today, there would be way more homeless people, and jobs will start to go down, and overall we would just be in another frenzy. And seeing that we rely on AI so much these days, and the money is really slim, we might not have the money to invent more computers, which would bring the downfall of many. But it could also benefit us, seeing that there is no more AI for us if there's another Great Depression, so that we could end up resorting back to just using our own minds instead of using AI to do what we do. This is my prediction on if another Great Depression happens. Thank you for listening.